You're not failing. Your life, by most measures, is moving. You have things. You've done things. You're doing things. And yet, there is this quiet, persistent feeling that everyone else is somehow further ahead, that they figured something out, that you haven't figured out yet. That time is passing, and you're standing still inside it. And the strangest part? You can't point to what's actually wrong. It usually starts small. You open your phone on a Tuesday morning. Someone you went to school with just bought a house. Someone else is getting married. Another person launched something, traveled somewhere, became something. And for a moment, just a moment, your own life goes quiet in a way that feels like falling. Not jealousy exactly. Something quieter than that. Something that asks, what have I been doing? This feeling follows you into the week. It sits with you during lunch. It watches you while you work. It whispers in the pauses between one thing and the next. And here's what makes it so disorienting. Rationally, that comparison is unfair. Everyone moves at a different pace. You've heard all of this before, but knowing doesn't make the feeling stop, because this isn't really about other people's progress. It never was. This is about something happening inside you, in the way your brain has learned to measure what you are worth. And that is a completely different problem. Here's what psychology tells us about this feeling. It doesn't mean you are lost. It doesn't mean you are lazy. It doesn't mean you're falling behind. It means your brain has been using the wrong unit of measurement, not because you are broken, but because the brain is doing exactly what it was trained to do. From childhood onward, we are measured against each other constantly. Grades, growth charts, test scores, who walked first, who read first, who got the better internship, who seems more settled. The brain didn't invent comparison. The world handed it to us as the primary tool for self-assessment. So when you feel behind, what you are actually feeling is the result of a measurement system that was never designed for your specific life. You're not behind. You're simply using someone else's ruler. Let's look at what is actually happening in the brain. There's a well-documented process in psychology called social comparison theory, first described by psychologist Leon Festing. It explains how humans instinctively evaluate themselves by comparing their abilities, progress, and worth to the people around them. This is not weakness. It is deeply wired. For our ancestors, knowing where you stood in the group was a survival mechanism. Falling too far behind meant being left behind. But here is where the modern problem begins. The brain was designed to compare you to your immediate tribe, a group of maybe 30 or 40 people, living similar lives in similar conditions. Now it is comparing you to thousands of people simultaneously, across careers, timelines, cities, and decades, all compressed into a 3-inch screen. Think of it like this. Imagine you're a runner on a track. In the original design, you could see the other runners clearly. You knew the distance. You knew the conditions. The race was fair. Now, imagine running that same race. But every few seconds, a new runner appears on the track. Faster, further ahead, in better shoes. And you have no idea how long they've been running, or what track they started on. That is what the modern comparison loop does to the brain. It doesn't compare fairly. It compares your internal experience, your doubts, your setbacks, your slow Tuesday, to someone else's external presentation, their highlight, their milestone, their curated moment. The result is a distortion, where the brain systematically underestimates your own progress while overestimating everyone else's. You don't see their slow Tuesdays. You only see the house. So what actually helps? Not motivation, not a reminder to be grateful. What helps is changing the measurement system itself. Here are 4 principles grounded in how the brain actually recalibrates. The first one is this: name the comparison trigger, not the emotion. When the feeling of being behind arrives, don't try to fight the feeling. Instead, trace it back to its source. What specifically triggered it? A post? A conversation? A number? This works because the rational, observing part of the brain can interrupt the automatic comparison response. When given something specific to analyze, you move from feeling to noticing. For example, You feel that familiar sinking feeling on Sunday evening. Instead of sitting with the anxiety, you ask, what did I see or hear today that started this? Often the answer is something small and specific, and once named, it loses some of its quiet power over you. The second principle, switch from lateral comparison to longitudinal comparison. Lateral comparison means measuring yourself against other people at this moment. Longitudinal comparison means measuring yourself against your own previous self over time. The brain responds very differently to these two inputs. Lateral comparison activates threat response, the sense that you're losing. Longitudinal comparison activates the brain's reward system. It registers progress, however small. Instead of asking, where am I compared to them? Ask, where am I compared to who I was 12 months ago? Not just in achievements, in clarity, in patience, in how you handle hard days. That measurement will almost always show movement. The third principle, identify your actual timeline. Much of the feeling of being behind comes from comparing yourself to a cultural default timeline, a largely unspoken script that says you should have certain things by certain ages. This timeline is not science. It is social inheritance, passed down from a particular generation, in a particular economy, living in particular conditions that no longer exist. Your timeline is yours. Research in developmental psychology shows that meaningful growth in relationships, identity, and purpose does not follow a fixed schedule. It follows readiness. Write down the timeline you feel you are behind on. Then ask, who decided this was the right order? And does that person know anything about my specific life? Usually the answer is no. The fourth principle is this: audit what you are actually building. The brain has difficulty feeling progress on things that don't have visible milestones. A house has a key, a wedding has a date, but growing in emotional depth, learning how to be still, understanding yourself more clearly, these have no announcement, no post, no celebration. They are invisible to the comparison machine, yet they are often the most important things being built. Once a week, write one sentence about something you understand now that you didn't understand a year ago. Not about your career or your circumstances, about yourself. The brain needs evidence. Give it evidence it can actually see. Here is the mental model to carry with you. Your brain is a measurement machine that inherited a broken ruler. The ruler was calibrated for a world where comparison was local, fair, and useful. In that world, seeing someone ahead of you was useful information. It meant move in that direction. But in this world, the ruler measures things that aren't comparable. Different starting lines, different definitions of arrival, different ideas of what the destination even means. The work is not to stop measuring. The work is to choose what you measure against. When you compare yourself to others, you are measuring shadow against shadow. When you compare yourself to your own past, to the version of you from a year ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, you are measuring something real. The feeling of being behind is not evidence that you are behind. It is evidence that you are paying attention, that you care about your life, that you want it to mean something, that you have not gone numb to the passing of time. That matters. But caring about your life and measuring your life against others are two completely different things. One keeps you honest. The other keeps you lost. You are not in a race you lost. You are in a life that is still being written, one that nobody else has the outline for, because nobody else has lived it. The only version of behind that matters is the version where you stop paying attention to what you're actually building. And you haven't stopped. You're still here. That's enough to keep going.